Congratulations to Scottie Scheffler, gold medalist as part of golf in the Olympic Games in 2024. You know, that last question that Mike Tirico was asking, that was courtesy of NBC Sports. We're saying, you know, when this was only the third time that golf has been a part of the modern Olympic Games, the fifth time overall ever as part of the Olympics. And to Mike's question of saying, you know, there were some people that doubted. He used the word scoffed. There were some people that doubted that golf would be something that would work in the Olympics, which, for my part, I never really understood that perspective. Why? Golf is an athletic sport. Golf is it's a sport, full stop, right? But why would golf be something less than any of the myriad of other sports that are contested in the Olympic Games? Some of which are modern sports that have been adopted in recent years. So why would golf stand out? But to me, ultimately, to the way he framed the question about whether the professional golfers would adopt it, and you remember, if we cast our minds back to when all this started in 2016 at Rio, there were a number of prominent players, amongst them Rory McIlroy and Jason Day, just as an example, that didn't want to be a part of the Olympic Games. Didn't like the timing. They claimed some that they were worried about Zika, etc. It wasn't universal in terms of what we heard from, but there were a number of different players that said no, that they didn't want to be a part of it. Very, very prominent players at the top, of which I gave you a couple of names. So I think maybe that was the start of it. Maybe that was where the seedlings were planted for this mentality that perhaps people wouldn't be fully engaged. But then we had the competition in the golf course at that time, even though I know it's gone through some trouble since the Olympic Games at Rio, the golf course at that time was really cool. That Gil Hanse golf course in Rio it played a lot like a links course because it was new and it was hard and it was running. And then we saw a great battle in gold medal won by Justin Rose. So you have a distinguished veteran major champion that breaks through, and it was clear that it meant a great deal to Justin Rose. I thought it was a perfect way to start. And then next time it's contested, Xander wins, and then this time it's contested, Scottie wins. So for me, I guess the bottom line is, regardless of what we're talking about in golf, and regardless what critics would say, the terminology commonly used now in our world that's seemingly so defined by social media is the haters, if you will. But a lot of times it's just people that are dissenters. It's people that have a different opinion in respect. However, in this case, I've always judged the importance of events, whether we're having a debate about the importance of the FedEx Cup playoffs, just as one example. I judge it based upon what it means to the players. And a little bit later on in the program, we're going to have a discussion about some comments that Rory McIlroy made post-Olympics about what this means to the players. Because for those that would even, to use Mike's phrase, scoff at the comparison I just gave you about the FedEx Cup, and they say, well, they've got millions and millions of reasons to be in favor of the FedEx Cup playoffs, as an example, which we're on the verge of starting. The Olympic Games are not about money. It's not about millions of reasons to be motivated. It's about national pride. And the bottom line is what I'm getting at with all this is that if it matters to the players, for me as a fan, I'm engaged. You've got me. If it means that much to these guys, and then we see the performance that we saw on that Sunday, even that weekend when you take Højgaard into account on Saturday, and then what Scottie did on Sunday was mind-blowing. Really, really impressive. And so, yeah, I'm all in. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was an incredible finish. So Scottie Scheffler claims the gold medal in his Olympic debut. He's the first number one ranked athlete in what they call the Olympic golf rankings, which is tied to world rankings, to medal in the men's Olympic golf competition. That final round 62 that I was just alluding to ties the course record, and it marks the second 62 of the week. Højgaard having it in the third round, as mentioned. Second lowest final round score in the Olympics. There was a 61 by Rory in 2020. Rory Sabatini, I should note, in 2020. Lowest round on the PGA Tour in 2024 for Scottie. Just out of interest here, he's had a 63 twice. At the Olympics, he had a back nine 29. That's a 6-under mark, including 4 consecutive birdies. That was holes 14 to 17. 72-hole total of 265 aggregate does set an Olympic record. The previous was 266 by Xander in 2020. Low final round score by an Olympic gold medalist previous was a 67 by Justin Rose in 2016, a 67 by Xander in 2020. He's the third consecutive athlete representing the United States to win a medal since 2016. Cooch did it in 2016 with the bronze. Xander did it, of course, in 2020 with that gold, and then 24 with Scottie's gold. And it was the first final round comeback in the men's Olympic golf competition because he trailed by 4 strokes coming in. Get this. He led the field in strokes gained, approached the green, by 10.264. And I realize that when I say that to you guys, I'm kind of getting into the weeds for those of you that might be watching us around the country that are not intensely into kind of the backstory of golf. That a strokes gained number is the average against the rest of the field. So that means that against the field as its entirety, he picked up 10.264 strokes on the field for the week just with his ball striking. That's how incredible, just how incredible it was. Now, as I mentioned to you, the storylines that circled around, especially the final day of the golf in the Olympics on the men's side, you had Tom Kim, who was very emotional in the scoring tent if you saw him afterwards. Tom Kim, if he had medaled in these Olympics, could have avoided the compulsory military service in his country. And you could see by the leaderboard that's right here next to me that he was unable to do it. He ended up finishing 4 shots back, so faded. Maybe it was the pressure. I don't know. But it was a compelling story because it's stories about sport and stories about athletes in the Olympics are always about these things. You saw, again, an athlete that if you wipe it away because they're professional athletes and go, well, they're highly compensated professional athletes, so none of it means the same thing as the engagement that you would get from anybody else. I would beg to differ with you when you see the emotions that were on display there. We saw Jon Rahm, who had a sizable lead into his back nine only to see it wither away. And you can see Jon Rahm ended up finishing in a tie for 5th and 15 under par. He spoke about what it meant to be there and how emotional he was coming into the week and more. As I mentioned to you as we just came on the air today, Rory McIlroy had some really interesting comments about these Olympic Games and golf in the Olympics. And I wanted to read them to you so that you guys can contemplate what he said too. Quoting is amazing, as follows. Amazing. We were talking about it out there, and Nico reckons it's the best tournament he's ever been involved in, and he's played in a Ryder Cup. He's talking about Nicholas Højgaard. I still think that the Ryder Cup is the best tournament that we have in our game. Pure competition, and I think that has the potential to be right up there with this. I think with how much of a boop show the game of golf is right now, and you think about the 2 tournaments that might be the purest form of competition in our sport. I'm going to reread that line. And you think about the 2 tournaments that might be the purest form of competition in our sport. We don't play for money in it. So it speaks volumes for what's important in sports and what's important, I think, every single player this week has had an amazing experience. Close quote from Rory McIlroy. Now, go back to earlier comments made here where I mentioned to you that early on, Rory McIlroy was not one of the early adopters. Now, I want to make sure we have context to that because in the early days of the Olympics, Rory McIlroy, who was still flying very, very high, clearly, because remember, it started in 2016, so the qualifying period would have started even before that. Rory was coming off his 4th major championship in his career in 2014, at the end of 2014 at Royal Liverpool. And so Rory was getting a lot of pressure from the powers that be in the game, call them the suits if you want to, that you had to be a part of this, and Rory pushed back. That was when he had the quotes that he got a lot of stick for, where he said, my job's not to grow the game. Paraphrasing, my job's not to grow the game. Right? It's because Rory was feeling all this pressure coming at him that you had to do this, you had to do this, you had to do this. And so, and it's interesting too, because when you think about it relative to the Ryder Cup, early Rory in his career, young Rory in his career, was the one, again, paraphrasing, that said, well, it's just an exhibition. And he came to find out that the Ryder Cup is so much more than just an exhibition. Because ultimately, these events, when they're not defined by prestige, when they're not defined by millions and millions of dollars, they're defined by something that carries much more weight: emotions, and history, and legacy. And so golf in the Olympics is building all of that. Where golf in the Olympics sits in comparison to major championships, we heard from pretty much all the players this week that said, yeah, not yet. But at the very least, relative to a Ryder Cup, in the opinion that you just heard expressed by Rory McIlroy and held by many, a gold medal in the Olympics, medaling in the Olympics in golf, very much stands alone.